Hello there, sword friends. Today I am going to do a ramble stream somewhat impromptu because my little guy is sleeping and I have maybe an hour to talk about some stuff that I should have talked about already. I have a lot of swords that I've acquired from my personal collection, a lot of swords that have been sent to me from review samples, and I am working through them, and it's a great problem to have, but it's taken me a little while. And in the meantime, I get a lot of questions about them. And so there are some things, some thoughts that I can provide about these swords that will hopefully help you in deciding if they are worth your money or not before I get to the full review. So before I say any more stuff, though, I do want to point out a couple caveats, as I am so famous for. One, these are initial impressions, so to speak. Most, if not all of these swords, I have not spent a great deal of time with, and my opinions are very subject to change when I, actually think about them more thoroughly, when I actually give them thought. But there are a number of small things like how well they're put together, little nuances of things that I like and don't like that might be helpful. Just know that if I give you a positive or negative impression, it's very subject to change when it comes to me actually doing a review. The other thing you need to know is that a fair amount of these are review samples. Some of them are not, though. So I've kind of mixed in a lot of the things that I haven't reviewed as I've been trying to clean my closet, and I'm running out of space already. Fine problems to have, but I have a lot of them. And yeah, so some of them are samples, some of them are not. If I forget to mention, probably just better to assume they're a sample, but there's a fair distribution between the two. And I don't think this is actually all of the swords that I have not reviewed, but it is a good amount. Anyway, I'm doing some innovative kind of thing here. I'm gonna actually bring this camera up, and you get to see behind the scenes. And I will talk about the swords as I bring them up. I have like a lot of them, though. So there's the ones in this camera right here. God, I'm in both in face camera. There's the ones behind me. I haven't reviewed any of them. I have lots of thoughts on them. Then there's this pile of stuff back here, and I'm gonna try to make my way through all of these things and give some brief thoughts about each one, and hopefully it is helpful. And I also have some beer to move me along while I'm doing it, because there will be a lot of babbles. Hopefully I am coming in clearly. Hopefully it's working. 2-camera streamy setup is a little wonky, but I'm working on it. So I'm also not sure how audio is going to work, and I'm going to try not to cut myself because these are within touchy distance, but I will try to, no, fuck it. Just kidding. I didn't screw it up just yet. Anyway, you're going to see me moving around and walking, and the audio is also going to be kind of crap. So if it is, please tell me in chat if it's sucking and you can't hear things. It is also full of lights and super hot, so I'm going to get sweaty and messy, but I digress. So I'm going to talk about some of these swords that I've got. This one was good for getting the focus right. I think, actually, maybe I need to refocus. Let's see. Oh, that's pretty good. Okay. Huzzah. How am I gonna? I don't have any place to even put the ones I've talked about. So, chatty chat. What would you like me to go all Katana first, and then the Euros, and kind of go by culture, back and forth, whatever floats my boat? If you have any suggestions, let me know. Today I am drinking Sierra Nevada Summerfest because they had it at Costco. I am out of Black Stack, incidentally. That is my favorite kind of beer. Black Stack 755. I am partial to it. The double and triple hop varieties that they come out with, that's like a local microbrewery, even though I don't know how small they are. They're a pretty big brewery, but I really, really like their hazy IPA. Anyway, also, happy 4th. I happen to be off today because it's the 4th, which is a holiday in the US. If you're joining me from elsewhere, that's why I get to stream in the middle of the week, in the middle of the day. Yes, I have a Mitsudome t-shirt. This is not merch. It's not a plug. It is because I got one on Amazon. Anyway, this right here is from a forge that I am not 100% sure on the name on, but there were a few things that were sent to me as, hey, what do you think about these things? And I provided some feedback, but this was an example of private feedback that I got. These are swords actually that I'm going to review, so I'm not 100% sure why I actually have them sitting here, other than I thought the scabbard was kind of neat. It's not quite My Little Pony katana, but it's very bold, and I happen to think that this was actually kind of cool. This pink and purple and blue. There's just a lot going on, and I thought it was kind of nifty looking. It also has this Suba from the same sword as the Toyuyan, the Zisei katana, so it had at least similar Suba to that one. But there's not really a whole lot to say about this one because it's not one that I think you can actually buy. So I will set it over here. Go through some of the other ones that were just like that. Again, this was for some private-y feedback, so you probably won't see these, but if there is any questions that you have, I can help if I talk on the microphone. If you have questions about these, then you are welcome to ask them, and I will still probably suck at chat, just like I'm sucking at talking into a microphone right now. Let's see. So this is another one. It has some, well, you can't really see it in this camera, but it's got a folded pattern and differentially hardened, and it came with this Samegawa scabbard right here, which I happen to really like the texture on. So if you see these offered, because I think you can buy these scabbards with this Samegawa kind of texture on them. I don't know if it's real or fake. I'm venturing against fake, but I like the way this feels in the hand and in the obi, and it doesn't, it's not super likely to get cut. The seam is on this one on the edge side, and I would personally like it if it were on the back side because it gives me more, it makes me feel like this is going to be a barrier between cutting out. So if you have the option of asking, then I would ask them to put the seam on the back. That's me personally. I think both of these I picked up or asked for because they were neat looking scabbards. And this one is a Naginata style wakizashi. Not sure a whole lot about this particular one other than it is basically what you would commonly buy from a Naginata, just without the pole. This has more or less a really long tang that runs through this handle here. Now it's been wrapped up and you can't really take it apart or do much with it, but effectively it's just a Naginata blade. This one was a little goofy though, because it doesn't have like a proper edge on it. It's got a really obtuse edge that's been ground in. It's not super fun. So those I think were sent to me as private feedback stuff, so I won't talk about people that sent them my way, but I did think nevertheless they are kind of neat looking, and you see similar things online. So if I were to buy this online, the cautionary tale that I would issue would be careful about the edge. Make sure that it actually has a proper edge on it rather than a big secondary bevel on it. No, it's not the My Little Pony katana. Working on it. I've got some angles. It's tough. It's the My Little Pony has presented some challenges. Is Evolution Blade the most reliable for Tamashigiri? I want to buy one in a couple of years. Yes. I don't know about reliable. Reliable wouldn't necessarily be the word that I would use. Not that they're unreliable, but they are very good at it. And so if you're primarily going to be doing Tamashigiri, then I don't know that I can tell you of a blade that does that better than the stuff from Evolution Blades. A friend of mine actually was over here when we were playing, when I was cutting with the Fei Long Higo katana. He brought his like hard geometry cutter and his super matte cutter geometry, and that like matte cutter geometry was just a laser beam. It was as the best cutter that I've ever moved with. It wasn't even like a cheat code. It was like the mats weren't there, and it was all like, hey, you're really bad at swinging the sword. But the mats, but it was very good. Yes, I think they're very good. Any new Shadow Dancer katana for future review? The entire wall of swords back there are Shadow Dancers. I think there are like 12 of them on that rack right there that I all have yet to review. So yes, and I will talk about them as I make my way through these. So, and for those of you saying happy 4th to you as well. Thank you for joining me on this 4th of July. I'm going to keep on blabbing now. This is going to get full. Oh, well. Is it all in frame? It's no, yeah, no, okay. Well, I can just hold it up. This is actually one I'm kind of excited to talk about. So the folks at Ryan Sword asked me to make some stuff, or rather give me designs for a sword that would be within $500. And this one is $500. I got it a couple days ago, and it is really, really cool. It's a Hirazukuri geometry. It's folded. I'm not sure if it's laminated. It has a pretty decent polish on it, and it's 30 inches long, but like I can move it with one hand. It's not whippy, but like it's quite a bit thinner than an average katana is. I gave them some custom dimensions, which they haven't actually checked to see if they hit or not yet. But it's pretty nifty. It's pretty nifty, and I asked for this mother of pearl scabbard, and it came out really, really nice. This one has tight ito. It has some demon fittings, which are a knockoff of the Hanwei Oni katana with a different tsuba that has demon faces on it that are kind of neat. Let's see if I put this away and can get it in the camera. But it reminds me of like Mount. It's not going to focus because I didn't think that far ahead. How about this way? Are you going to focus on the thingy? No. Hey, there we go. Almost had it. Well, I digress. It has two demon faces right on the end here, and they like face each other like this. It reminds me of Mount Rushmore a little bit. America. Anyway, it's really, really neat. The ito's tight, and it's very big, but very nimble feeling, and it feels like they got the dimensions that I was after. I looked at my Evolution Blade LMC, and I didn't copy the dimensions, but that gave me an idea of how thin I could ask a sword to be in some proportions for distal taper. So I asked for a longer blade, a Hirazukuri blade, a blade with a bohi, all things that are different than the thing that I have on my LMC. But that gave me some guidelines of what I could play in, and Ryan Sword actually hit it pretty well. This feels really, really good. Eventually, I guess it's not going to be a particularly durable cutter, but it's probably going to be a very effective mat slayer. And it was $500, and it doesn't feel like hot garbage. It actually feels really good, and it's pretty braggadocious looking. I was asking for something a little crazy looking, and I think they certainly delivered it. Kind of surprises me that this is $500 though. I would have guessed it would be more. And yeah, I happen to like it. I happen to like it a lot. I will have some photos of it in the not too terribly distant future, so keep an eye out for those. I will probably post one somewhere. How many swords have passed through your hands since you started this hobby? Thousands in totality, like have passed through my hands because I go to shows. Like I was at Blade Show not too long ago, and I probably handled, I don't know, at least hundreds of blades while I was there. Not necessarily thousands, but I've had a number of them. If you mean like how many do I own, that might be a different question. But have handled, even like just touched and moved along, it would be in the thousands. I don't know how many thousand, but like a few. Okay, next one. How about I switch it up a little bit? Oh, how about this? This is one it's going to tip over here. You can see the point of balance. It's also going to get really irritating, so I'm going to turn it off. Okay, well, these. That's going to tip over. Okay. You'll have to look at them that way. Somebody sent me some lightsabers. And I got America colors. The lightsabers are not something that I have tested before, but I've been asked to a number of times, but every company that offers to send me one always wants to send me one. And the folks at Time Blade Guild, I believe is the website, and they sell these sabers. These are like their in-house designed ones. They're a little bit lighter and focus a bit more on fencing. From what I recall from the conversation, the folks there have done fencing and wanted something that wasn't as cumbersome to move around and wanted something that had a more elegant point of balance for like the various, or at least two different groups of people that have rules around the types of sabers that you can use. So that's kind of why it's designed the way that it is. I actually brought these to a Katori class and tried to do Katori Shinto-ryu with them. And I had, it was fun. It was actually really fun to do. It was very distracting to actually do a Koryu with a lighted blade in your face. It was kind of, it was a different variable than I was expecting to use. They also don't hurt very much when you get whapped in the hands, at least if you're going somewhat controlled. So these were also fun things to use. I don't need that question up there anymore. What's next? This is not great. This is the Albion Sempak, not one that I have reviewed, one that I got a while ago to do a review on and just have never gotten to it. I will admit I thought this sword was dumb when I got it, and it is awesome. I really like it, and so it happens to be one that I won't likely part with. The complex geometry on it, the way it moves around, it is just a really, really fun sword. But Albions are one of those things that don't, I don't know, like, you know, they're going to be good, more or less. So I won, this is mine. I bought this secondhand, and so it's not something that I am as motivated to review. I tend to review things that are sent from private sword citizens first, and then review things that are from companies second, and then get to my own stuff kind of intermittently. And I'm kind of, this keeps going down on the list because you know it's going to be good. And I don't know that there's, you know, if I had something bad to say about it, it might move it up the list. But it's a very good sword, and it actually kind of tickled me in a way that I didn't. That sounds sexual. I don't mean it to. The sword feels really good in the hand, and I wasn't expecting to like this type as much as I did, but it actually grew on me quite a bit. So the Sempak, if you thought it looked dumb, I don't disagree, but it is a very fine feeling sword. Also, apologies for not talking into the microphone consistently. You'd think after 10 years of doing this that I'd know what I was doing, but I do not. And so if you hear echoey stuff, you want me to repeat anything, let me know. Is there some controversial KSR video out there with lightsaber effects? I think there is one. It's like one with, what is it, Otake Sensei that got like lightsabered over. I don't know if it's controversial, but I have seen it. Looks pretty neat. What a weird part to pop into at the stream. Yes. I don't know that there's a not weird part. It keeps pretty weird. I heard LK Chen is working on a new model of Kriegsmesser for Battle Arms. I hope so. The last one that they did was really good. All right. What is the best way to put this one up? Probably this way. Okay. So this is a cold steel something. I can't remember. German longsword, something like that. And like, it feels actually not too bad. It's pretty nimble. The guard on it is pretty substantial in size and kind of off-putting, at least, but in person, it kind of grows on you. And there's a lot of little things on this one that I happen to like beyond what I typically got on cold steel. The scabbard doesn't feel like cheap. It feels pretty well put together. The grip generally feels pretty good, but I haven't reviewed this one yet. The thing that I have concerns about is that this little ring right here is like tack welded on. I don't imagine it's going to survive much of anything, would be my guess. But that was the main concern around this one. I will get to this eventually, but I just haven't been terribly interested in it. And I don't even know if you can buy it anymore. It's funny that it may be a discontinued sword before I ever actually get around to reviewing it, which seems about my speed. These are all on top. This is the Albion Squire. I can't remember which one this one is. Steward or the Squire, one of them. And I really like it. I like this sword quite a bit. It's one that I want to hang on to. Again, not particularly motivated to review it quickly because it's an Albion. And if you think you're going to like it, you probably will. And if you think you won't like it, you probably will, because they do a very solid job. They're not inexpensive, but you know, if you've seen a video about an Albion sword and the build quality, you probably have some solid idea of what to expect from it. And this is no different. I got it secondhand. I got it to review. I didn't expect to like this kind of pointy thing, but this is like a great little balance between a poker and a cutter, and it's very fun to move around. And I really happen to I like the grip. I'm not super a fan of the way it works. It's got a wheel pommel on it, which is not my bag of tricks, but I like the way it swings. This is a fun sword. And one day I will review it. One day, I hope. Different strokes, different folks. Some folks like them. I don't always like them, but sometimes they grow on me. I know evolution blades are specifically for Tamashigiri, but are they tough? Would hard target geometry be the best for toughness? If you're looking for tough, then I don't know that I would recommend evolution blades. It depends on what you mean by toughness. I've seen people cut in the dojo on used Japanese tatami mats, tackling double, triple rolls that have not gone particularly well. And I've seen, in the shots that I've taken of them, where they're basically bent into an S and they spring back into shape and do a solid job, which is really quite good for a differentially hardened blade, particularly one that's thin. So for what they are very durable. However, they are constructed like a Japanese sword, and they are differentially hardened. And therefore, if you want to whack bricks with it, then it's not going to do a very good job for that, or hold up very long, would be my guess. I haven't taken any of my very expensive evolution blades and put them through the torture testing that I have a number of other swords, but I would venture a guess they're not gonna do particularly well at that. So if you want tough, then Shadow Dancer or Cloud Hammer make S5 or S7 variety swords. Those have proven to be the most durable swords that I've tested in the methodology that I use anyway. If you're talking about hitting and doing really stupid things with them, then they hold up well for that. But yeah, I don't think an evolution blade is going to win a toughness award, but they are as or more durable than they need to be for the specific use of being a very effective tool to practice Japanese swordsmanship with. As a katana guy, what non-Japanese sword would you say is the most comfortable for you to use other than katanas? Long swords are great. They're very fun. Messers in particular, I have taken kind of a keen shining to, and that is in large part due to sword friend Ian. So special tip of my hat. He lent me a bunch of them. I wasn't a big fan of Messers. I was less a fan of even kind of like handmade-y looks, and like some of that really grew on me with the Lands Connect Emporium stuff, which I actually have a few to talk about back there. But Messers, they're not like a European katana, but they do feel really familiar. A lot of the techniques that I practice in terms of swinging are similar, and I like the way they look, and so I would say Messers are probably, and to a lesser extent falchions, just because they often have a wheel pommel on them, which I don't like, but Messers are very familiar and comfortable to me. Dao are also great. I really like those. I'm a big fan of Compulon, but not because they feel comfortable or good in the hand, just I happen to like those. And thanks for the super chat, much appreciated. Incidentally, if you are throwing a super chat out there, I will not lie and say that the color makes it jump out and I'm more likely to answer your question, but not for the money. Don't feel obligated to spend anything. I will try to answer all your questions. By nature, I suck at it. Nevertheless, I appreciate it. It pays for some beer later, so cheers. Glad I could catch the stream. I usually miss the live stream, so glad you could make this one. And glad you like the content. RVA Katana carrying new Taisuke for once, reasonably priced, $600. Excellent leather. I've heard mostly good things about the Taisuke model. The less expensive, I can't remember what it's called, but it does seem like they give you a pretty good value in comparison to some of the other swords that they put out. So I think it looks good. Haven't had one, but I think it looks good. I'd also mention, just on a positive note about Taisuke, the SO5 katana that I reviewed a while ago, I didn't have an overwhelmingly large amount of positive things to say about it. And recently, Shadiversity reviewed one. I don't know that they named it the SO5, but it's like the revised version of that. And it seems like every single thing I touched on in the review of my SO5 has been now addressed. Shad didn't show the Nakago of it, but I saw that on social media. It looks like they're cleaning up the Nakago. The scabbard looks like it is more ornate, has a little something a little bit more special than just a lacquered red paint job and some silver fittings on it. The Suba and Fuchikasha tell more of a story. I think that is really good. They it looks like they improved the tightness of the Ito, and it also is done in Jabayamaki, which is like a stranded thing, which not a lot of people do. So the SO5 has shifted into a different kind of sword. It also didn't look like the polish was hot garbage on that sword either. So they have addressed a lot of the concerns that I had about that sword and really tried to improve it. And so I think that deserves a little bit of, tip of my hat. It seems like every notable point that I had has been addressed in a meaningful way, which kind of tickles me. Want Lands Connect Emporium to bring back their really big Kriegsmeister. The Monster, I think, is what they dubbed that one. Swordfriend Ian had that. I think that was always a custom one. I don't know if they ever sold it as a model, but could be wrong on that. I was wondering, I've seen a 1060 mini katana. How would it compare to a Ronin Dojo Pro? I don't honestly know. Haven't tested a 1060 through hardened variety from mini katana. It's possible it would be very equivalent, but the Ronin Dojo Pros have proven to be an incredible value if durability is your aim. Sometimes the Ito is loose. The last few that I've had have been pretty solid. The shapes also seem less cumbersome, and the blades have at least in the dozen or so that I've brought to failure have always been pretty good. So I don't know, but Ronin Katana's 1060 blades seem to be a little bit more durable than some of the other blades that are 1060. I don't know exactly why that is. If they're made out of the same material, could be geometry, could be the heat treatment, could be a number of other things. But the blades that they sell in the Dojo Pro line have been very, very durable. More talking about other swords. I won't spend very long on this one because I don't think you can get it anymore. This is a disaster waiting to happen. Talking to the microphone, Matt. You should get a lapel mic or something if I'm going to do these. So this is a Balar Arms. I think it's from a company that they don't use anymore, and they have a new version out. And I don't like it at all. It's not that it's poorly designed, but it's got a wheel pommel. The handle's too big. It's not particularly comfortable. I'm just not a fan of the sword at all. So, of course, I believe that LK Chen is making a newer version, or there's another version of that sword out there. So it's possible it feels completely different. Admittedly, I always love the way those Type 14 swords look, to a less extent this one, but I seldom really like the way they feel. But that actually brings me to a sword that will come up later, which is a Type 14 that I actually really like the way it feels. We'll keep moving along here. I think this is the last Albion that I have that maybe I haven't mentioned. It's a Knight, and I don't like it. It doesn't feel bad. I just don't particularly like it. It's not that it's bad. It's just nothing. It's very nimble. It's very nimble in the hand. It moves reasonably well. There's a lot of people that have talked about the Knight and like the Knight, and it has this kind of quintessential arming sword look. I just don't happen to like it. Doesn't vibe with me a lot. It's not that it feels bad, though. Incidentally, there is some variation. Local sword friend of mine, Dustin, has a Knight that he recently purchased, and this one feels quite a bit lighter than his does. I didn't have them side by side, so maybe he'll let me borrow it at some point to do a comparison of these and the variety that you can feel. This one is quite old, as I understand it, so maybe it's more off or on, but it feels lighter in the hand. This one, his felt a little bit more substantial than this one did, which I happen to think I like more, but I still just don't. It's a wheel pommel. Just don't. It doesn't vibe with me. I like the Steward or Squire. I can't remember which one. The other arming sword that I talked about. Oh, I'm not keeping up with chat well. Was the blade worth was Blade Show worth the trip as a sword guy? I'm a couple hours away from Atlanta and was considering checking it out. Yes, I could have absolutely spent a lot more time there. It's tough when you talk about like having to pay for a hotel and airfare and all of that kind of stuff. I was able to moonlight at Blade Show a little bit as I worked out a business trip at the same time. So I didn't get to spend all the time there. I absolutely could have spent more. In retrospect, I would have stayed at the hotel where everyone stays, like in the convention center. I didn't. I stayed like not far away, but getting to have some after hours conversations and some beers and stuff like that, and then just be able to go right to the room would have probably made it a better experience for me. I also would have stayed another day and gone the full 3 days. There's just a ton of stuff to do there. So even as a more sword guy, like you can probably appreciate knives. I don't know that there's knife people that hate swords or sword people that hate knives or something. It's certainly dominated overwhelmingly by knives, but there's so many just like things that push the realm of human capability and excellence in the knives there that it can tickle you to see. There's absolutely an enormous amount of things that are cool there, and you can spend, a day goes by pretty quick when you get to talking, and everyone was really generous with their time. Most folks did not know who the hell I was, so there were a few people that recognized me, but generally I was just some other guy walking around at Blade Show, and people were pretty content to donate their time and knowledge in terms of talking to me about whatever it happened to be for 15 minutes to an hour or something at times. Anyway, yes would be the answer. Would LK Chen, it'd be fun if LK Chen would let you review a Chengdao. It would be. I don't think they're going to send me anything anymore. That would be my guess, but I agree. I would be happy to do it. I like the stuff from LK Chen. I'd take an opportunity to do that. Absolutely. All right. More swords. I'll switch over to a Katana. Sit on the stand. Don't tip over. Okay. So this is the Ghosts of Tsushima Katana set. I believe these are made by Jayco. There was somebody was listening in on the conversation, and I mentioned, I think in the Swordier chat that I had, that I wouldn't mind reviewing a Jayco sword, that had the metal bits at the end. And so a local sword friend reached out to me and said, hey, I have these. I'd be happy to donate them to channel. I eventually met up. He was very gracious with his time and offered to meet me several times, and I was kind of aloof, but I went out, got the swords, and I will talk about them eventually. They are I like the metal coterie at the end, but it is a lot. It's a lot of material, and it adds a lot of weight and kind of distracts from the sword being good. But there is nevertheless a metal coterie at the end. So I will probably talk about these swords from a reviewer guy perspective thingy. These are I don't know. I don't often review like anime swords or swords that are in film or other media. So the videos, I think, will probably do well, but Jayco did a decent job. But the coterie at the end is enormous, and I can see why some, like, if you're actually going to use them or walk around with them, you may well prefer the ones without these metal weights at the end, because it adds a lot. Take the sword out so you can see it, though. This is like a folded variety. I don't know if it's their Tamagane or something. These were not cheap, from my recollection. And the sword, like, out actually feels substantial. The fittings and whatnot are pretty hefty, but like the Ito is reasonably tight, and the cotton is soft. It's quite pillowy in the hands, and I'm gonna stop handling it because I'm gonna get it all dirty, and then it'll be too ugly to do a video with. Next, put this up here so I can stop looking at it. So this is one that I have yet to review. I don't like it. This is another piece from Al Ayubi. the worst sword that I ever reviewed was from All IUB. At the same time I got that, I got this. This is certainly better than the worst sword I ever reviewed, but I don't like it. It came in this scabbard because I believe it broke before I got it, and Sword Friend Matt, I believe, cut it down or made it smaller. So I don't know, it felt less relevant to actually review since it had been modified in a kind of substantial way. But I don't like it. It doesn't look uncool, but it feels dumb, and I don't know. Just it's not one I'm particularly looking forward to doing. So it sits on the back burner, and I don't. After reviewing the All IUB sword that I did the first time, nobody really seemed interested in hearing more about them. So I didn't think there was a whole lot more to add to the conversation. So I have yet to do much of anything else with it. Something maybe a little bit more relevant. Now, JS Bladecraft, Joe, put a video out about this sword today. This is the Romance of Men lobster shrimp something katana. It has a name. I can't remember exactly what it is. I practiced with this one, so I did bring this to the dojo and practiced with it. You can kind of see how the light catches it. The hamon shows up really well. It has kind of a cool fiery pattern on it. The ito is also really tight and feels like a high quality silk on it. It feels really nice, and it's really, really tight and feels good in the hand. It draws and sheathes well as a practice weapon. It's not particularly loud, but it was really nice to actually train with. The scabbard feels really good. Like at a glance, when they said we're sending this over and it's $350, the Surudoi sword that they sent a while ago was an interesting shape and really cost effective and had swirling mitsudomes on it and seemed like a really excellent executed sword for the money at like $150. When you step up to 350, there's a lot more options, and it's a lot harder to compete there. I actually think this does. There's some redeeming things about it. Now, the shaping of the handle and whatnot is not as good as a Shadow Dancer sword in the price point. The polish is not as good as Shadow Dancer at the price point, but the fittings are a little bit more elaborate. The ito is very tight and serviceable. It's not as well tightened, but the ito also feels like a higher quality material. The blade draws and sheathes and works really well. The saya also feels more substantial a lot of times than something from Shadow Dancer. So this was actually really fun to move around. I enjoyed training with it. I haven't cut with it. I practiced with it for about an hour in class and was kind of tickled that it was as nice as it was. Now, Joe's had a little step that I noticed in his video today. If you haven't seen it, I'd encourage you to check it out. Stop watching this one and go back. This will be up. I'm going to be babbling for a while. But his had a little step up here, which I don't like. Mine does not have that. It does have a little bit of a ledge. Like I said, there's still more refining that could be done. However, it's got a cool hamon. The polish is really zazzy. The fittings are kind of bold looking. Maybe you like them, maybe you don't, but the material of the saya feels really good. The blade draws and sheathes well. Like there's a lot really actually going pretty well for this sword that I happen to really, really like. Lobster sword. Yeah. Thank you for the super chat. I am curious how well Tamahagane holds up to bad cuts. It certainly doesn't hold up like really any better than the inexpensive swords. I haven't tested a whole lot of Tamahagane swords in fairness, but any of the folded steel stuff doesn't really do much better. I would venture a guess that the Tamahagane stuff, you're more likely, I would guess, to get a sword that is softer. The softer it is, the more likely it is to survive like the process of manufacturing. If they really make it brittle, it's more likely to crack when they quench it, is my understanding. So you're more likely, when given that material is hard to work with or takes a lot more time to work with, they're probably going to do a lot more things to make it survive the process of manufacture rather than unleash the potential of material. So I think if you like the way folded steel looks, then I can't blame you. I do too. However, in swords that are like $500 or something like that are Tamahagane, or if you're buying something from a mass production place in China, the likelihood that it's going to be in some way a better performer is unlikely. And in fairness, I think the likelihood that it's softer or maybe a little bit more delicate is probably more likely. Sabers don't have the media presence katanas, and yeah, I suppose they're not glamorized the same amount, like at least military sabers and whatnot. Will you ever do a video in the same vein as the drunk Khonshu review? It's very likely I will at some point. In fairness, those videos don't do particularly well, so there's not a motivator to necessarily do them. A lot of people find them funny, but not necessarily helpful, and so the goal is to be helpful as well as entertaining. Maybe helping is making you laugh a little bit, but manufacturers also tend not to really like when I do that. That was the last time the folks at Bud K wanted to work with me, so I don't. It's a tall order. Now, I do think there are some drunk reviews coming. There's somebody I sent some broken swords to, and he mentioned doing making a sword for me out of some broken swords, making a katana, which I thought is cool and incredibly generous given the amount of time that, like, the commitment and time that it takes to do that is enormous. So I think the condition was, though, that I do a drunk review on it when it arrives. So there are some people that really like it, but not as much. But yes, just not today. As a side note, like talking in the drunk review voice, like it's like I need a lozenge at the end of it. It's a little bit much. Any S5 in your collection? I have one S5 blade from Shadow Dancer, I believe. It's the Hirozakuri blade that they sent me. I still have that. I think that's the only S5 blade I have in the collection. Be fun to like test like a 30-inch S5 blade or something like that. But I may have some others in the future, just not today. I got to move a little quicker. I'm going to be going through this all day. And my little guy is going to wake up in less than an hour. Okay, so cold steel Italian longsword. I like it. This is actually a really decent sword from Cold Steel. I want to say that at the top of my head, these were like under $200. It actually feels really nice. It has a scabbard that feels kind of not great, though. Like the leather feels like it's going to come off. I don't even actually know if I reviewed this or not. I might have already reviewed it. I'm not entirely sure, but I don't actually mind this one for the money. That was the punchline. This is a Ronin katana, one that I bought myself from the secondhand world of things. I don't remember exactly what model it is. It's chunky, but fun to move around. Not a bad sword if you like. I particularly like the pommel area here. It's not too bad for me to move around. So don't actually mind it, but there are some things that make these a little bit suboptimal. The way the handles are wrapped, I don't actually mind them in my hand, but they're somewhat unsightly, and they don't necessarily fall apart or anything easily, but they feel a little like wiggly, and I never really like that in a weapon. So the grip is one of my least favorite parts about it. It's a little stout, but if you want to like hit things hard with it, then that's not necessarily a bad thing. This is I can't remember. This is this isn't the newest version of this sword, but this is like the Brescia Spadona something. I believe the folks at Unsheathed Sword Reviews, Vic and John, did a comparison between the manufacturer of this one and the most recent one. And yeah, this one does have some like cool hollow grinding. It doesn't feel bad in the hands. I don't think it was terribly expensive. This pommel, despite not being a wheel, just will murder my hands if I grab it, though. So I like these scent stopper pommels with the idea that I can hang on to them, and this one I can't. So not particularly eager to do a review on it. Also, there's redeeming things about this, but I don't think you can buy one like this exactly anymore. The new version is different, so it doesn't motivate me to get to it particularly quickly. I was lying. There's one more Albion, this one right here. I can't remember Steward, Squire, I get them mixed up. It's got a wheel pommel on it, I know, but I still actually like this one. I'd like it more if it didn't have that wheel pommel on it, but it's like a mini Baron. It cuts really well and it focuses on that, and I happen to like it. It feels good in the hand, and all of the same things I've already said about Albion blades. Like you probably, if you like this style of sword, you're going to like it. I actually was surprised at how much I didn't mind the wheel pommel on it. There's been a few that have been like that. This happens to be another one. This guy is a Starfire sword, and it is a sword-like object, to be sure. I've been meaning to have a Badger Blade Starfire sword, Sabersmith, Angel sword, and Arms and Armor katana, as well as, well, those are the ones that are really important to me, because when I was a kid, those were the things that tended to be at the Renaissance Festival. Mostly Arms and Armor and Angel Sword were the ones I remember the most, but later, like, the other brands came in or may have been there. Starfire was there and around there when I was a kid too, but I can never seem to get all of them in my collection at the same time. This one, though, I picked up because it was cheap. I ended up getting it for, like, I don't know, like 60, 70 bucks on eBay or something. Sometimes you can find a good deal, and it's small, and even though it's pointy, it's not sharp, and so I can let my son walk around with it. He still needs to be a little older to not, have immediate grab my hand supervision. But if there were a sword that you were going to give to your kid to walk around with so they can also play swords with you, it's a good enough place to start. I still don't like lots of things about it, though. Now, this one's another donation to the channel from Sword from Matt, donor of the Croquet Stake of Doom, the 3V blade that was destroyed, as well as a number of other things that have been brought to failure on the channel. The Zombie Tools sword, he's been very generous in having me break things for posterity. This was out of a place out of Ukraine, I want to say, something he picked up on Etsy. I don't remember exactly what it was, but I think the punchline was that it was like 50 bucks. And just at a glance, like, it's substantial, like it's pretty chunky, but it's not as crappy as I have felt for that amount of money. I also realize now that I have neglected it, and the blade is beginning to rust. You might be able to see that along the edge, so I have to clean it up after the stream. That's a bummer. Don't cut yourself. Okie doke. Did I miss any questions? Love the Shadow Dancer S5. Here's a Curry review you reviewed. Yeah, I didn't really push the durability side of things, but that sword is fun. It's also like a fun guest sword. There's a friend of mine who has a son who's interested in swords because they're awesome. Can't blame him. But the basic gist is that he has a lot of trouble moving the sword around that his dad got him. And so having a sword that was really, really light, if you don't have like a ton of mass yourself, you're a younger person, or you swinging a sword is not necessarily something that you can take for granted you're going to be able to do, then that Here's a Curry blade is really light, and he had a lot better luck cutting with that blade than just about any other sword around. So it could be a little price prohibitive, but at the same time, it's very effective and can be the difference between making a cut or not if you don't have the same kind of mass or arm strength that I do. This is the Kingston Arms, like Town Guard, I believe, something like that. I don't like it. That's the punchline. I've been meaning to do a review of it. I think I have part of it filmed. I don't like the sword. It's not fun to move around. It's just there's issues that I don't like it. That's unfortunately, I can't be more descriptive than that, but that's the basic feeling that I have on this one. I don't actually am not a big fan of it. There are things that I do like. I like the way the guard is done. I like the general look of it. I think it's handsome. It blends in with kind of the town guardy looking swords that I've seen, but I don't like moving it around or cutting anything with it. Put a couple katanas up. So this is a practical XL, one that I bought. Well, both of these are swords that I purchased secondhand. So from my own collection here, the practical XL is one that I got recently. I picked it up secondhand on Sword Buyer's Guide, I believe I think that's what I did. I've had a number of these before, but I think it's prudent to make a video. I often recommend this sword, and I haven't had one for years. So I got another one. All the same reasons I would sell this one are true. It's not the right size for me, but it is an incredibly effective sword for doing tamashigiri on a budget. If you've got under 300 bucks to spend, this is a great piece to start with. And this is a Huawei sword, one that you might have seen in some other videos featured here and there. I don't know if I'll actually do a review on it. I probably will eventually, but a very good sword. And lots of things that are endearing about Huawei are present on this one. It's one of their less expensive through hardened variety swords, but very, very nice. Take this out. I don't know if anyone is actually interested in seeing the XL geometry, but seldom does anyone actually talk about the difference or why it's good, so I can maybe point it out here. So two different geometry swords. There's an Unokobe Zukuri geometry from the Huawei on the bottom, and then the XL geometry on the top in the Practical XL. So this, you can notice that the blade just looks fatter, and that's because it is. It has a wider blade, it has a wider habaki, and a lot of times this is the part that seems to limit most manufacturers. In Longshuan, they seem to only make like one habaki size that's 1.25 inches wide. And to do anything else requires making a custom habaki and scabbard, and all the parts and everything that they do has to change a little bit. Hanwei and the XL geometry makes these wide blades, and that wide blade tends to be a more effective cutter. If you look at the Evolution blades, the Hataya Katetsu blades, or any kind of like performance cutting blade, they often have a different habaki and a wider blade, and that makes it a much better lawnmower if that's what you're going for. And you can kind of see them just one next to another here. That's my guess anyway as to why they tend to work better. But that is just in comparison. It's not like much wider. It's not it's not a double wide, so to speak, but it is a much wider blade, and they tend to be pretty effective cutters. They aren't necessarily as nimble as a result, but they cut really well. And anyway, I don't know that too many people like show one next to another. So that's an example. Though I do have a practical, I think I've featured it in a review, but I have an old original practical katana. So, and then I think I have some more swords theoretically on the way, and one of them I think might be a practical XL light. So I'll be able to do a few comparisons of the practical line perhaps. Anyway, still stand behind it. I haven't played with this one or cut with this one yet, but I have cut with a number of practical XL geometry blades. And if you are looking for a inexpensive way to do tamashigiri, then I think it's tough to beat that geometry of blade. I wish they offered them in more sizes. I've complained to Patrick at Cass Iberia about it, that it'd be nice if they offered some 30-inch blades, some shorter blades. That seems like a great place to start if you want to cut tatami mats in your backyard. They're incredibly durable and resilient cutters. Also, bamboo. They tend to do a pretty solid job on bamboo as well. Shadow Dancer, in my opinion, you're buying more for the polish and fit and finish than for the steel. Could be, but on the Shadow Dancer side of things, they also offer S5 and S7, I think. And honestly, like whenever anyone says they're made out of some schmancy kind of steel, I have no way of validating that. But I have beat the Shadow Dancer S7 katana and the Cloudhammer S7 katana. They were called Bizer at the time, but Cloudhammer, I had the S7 katana, and then the Shadow Dancer, there was an S7 katana that I tested. I think they were S7. And I pushed both to failure. And those two are on the most durable. Those are the most durable swords that I've tested. The Cloudhammer was a little bit more durable, not by, it's hard to equate because I did them at very different times. But I want to say that the Cloudhammer was just a little bit more durable, but it's position 1 and 2 in the most durable swords that I've tested in terms of how many times I had to beat it on a stake, how little it flexed, all of the things. But I want to say I got the Shadow Dancer to take a little bit of a bend, and I don't think I did with the Cloudhammer version. But if you buy one out of presumably the S5 or S7 steel, they are more durable if you want them to be. But you also, I think you can get a better fit and finish with Shadow Dancer than you can with Cloudhammer. Not that Cloudhammer doesn't have its own kind of pros and cons, that like the leather Ito that they have. They do some other things that I think are also nice, but the tightness of the Ito and the way the handle is shaped and whatnot, I think I prefer on the Shadow Dancer swords that I've had. So I do really like the Ito on the Cloudhammer, that like leathery kind of stuff that they put on. It's quite nice. I don't know. There are pros and cons. I want to say they were pretty equivalent in price, but I don't know that you're just buying for the polish. It's just an option. You can buy it for the polish, but you can also get a steel that is very durable if that's your choice, and get some fit and finish perks as well. Maybe do this one. So one that I'm not getting to anytime soon. It's an Arms and Armor German bastard sword, and it's nice. I actually happen to like it. It's fun. It like walks the line between what I can kind of handle in one hand. It's a little too much. It's certainly better in two, but like I feel like I can. It's very substantial. Anyway, and this stand does not like it so much. But I like this sword. This is just a really old one. The new ones that they make have a slightly different kind of look. Not really look to them. They're cast from the same thing, with the metal that they're casted from is a little bit more opaque looking. It's a little less shiny. But I do like the way the swords feel. And it has this disco ball at the bottom, which doesn't hurt my hand like a typical wheel pommel does. But it's not a scent stopper, and I feel like I can really grab it. I ergonomically, I actually like the way this sword feels. All right, this is a Swordier. This is from Swordier. This is their long sword, and the one that I got had some rust, unfortunately, that I was lazy and didn't catch. I kind of got some of it off. I don't know if you can see it in the camera here, but in terms of how it feels, I like actually the way it feels. It moves pretty well. It's not clumsy or derpy feeling. You know how I feel about wheel pommels. I don't need to keep harping on it. I like this little riser here, and gives me a Lord of the Ringsy kind of fun vibe. But it's a little different, and it feels, it feels pretty good. The nodes aren't exactly in the right place, but I mean, I can't remember exactly how much this one is, but it moves around well enough. I don't honestly even have much of first impressions, apart from the one I got came a little bit rusty. Not a big deal with what I have planned for it. I like some of the visual accents on here, but I don't think it's a very expensive sword. And most importantly, it doesn't feel like derpy. It feels like a sword that you can move around, which is, I'm so glad that companies are doing that now, and they're not just making the crowbars over and over and over again. I have 4 cloud hammers and an S5 sword don't even have horn parts, which $200 swords do. They're back and forth. I have there's some Shadow Dancer swords up here that are like $700, $800, $900 and don't have horn parts on them either. It's something I prefer to see, but at the same time, it's seeming like less people care about it maybe, and so they save the money. Any fireworks gonna blow up? Gonna be doing live soon as well. Well, good on you, Joe. I don't think it's raining quite a lot over here, so all the fireworks got moved to yesterday, which I did not realize because I'm awesome at planning, or some later time in the week. So unfortunately, I don't think any explosions are in my future. This is a Gian from Romance of Men. It's one that I got a while ago, and I can't remember exactly the context that I got it in, but I do need to do a review. I like the blade, don't like the handle or fittings is the short answer here. It's pretty rigid, but like it actually feels really, really, really nice in the hand. But then the round handle is something I can absolutely do without. So this was pretty early. I got this from Romance of Men like a couple of years ago. And so they've made some pretty big strides in making stuff better. So it would not surprise me if they don't make round handles on these anymore. But that's the part I can kind of do without. It's kind of weird to index. But in fairness, I haven't cut anything with it. This is going to look familiar to somebody in here. This is basically a very similar blade to the one that you just saw, different Gian. How's this one look, Kratos? And like feels nice, but I can index it and it doesn't turn, and it basically feels like what I would hope the other sword would. I want to say this one was Jakku, and it came with a bend in the blade that was irksome to the sword friend that sent it my way. No, those are not fingerprints. I thought maybe I didn't wipe it off. It feels really good in the hand, though. Actually, like it feels really nice. Unfortunately, it had a bend, and I will do something with it. Nope. Maybe it only goes in one way. Yep, same thing. This is a cold steel something sword. Don't like it. So descriptive. It's not, I don't know, not the worst, but still not a fan. Switch over to a katana or three. Get this one where it tips over. This is a Pedestazan Wakizashi. I want to say that they're like 60 or $70, and it, yeah, I don't like it. Got to finish a review. Alien Tude, Kyle did a review on this one a while ago. I just haven't gotten to finishing it. I don't even know if they still sell this one. It has some endearing things. It's not terribly expensive, but it also is missing the point on a few others. These are from Yari no Hanzo. So I have an inexpensive Yari no Hanzo, like basic sword, and then a mid-tier around $500 sword. And I've gotten to train with the mid-tier sword. I think I did like a very little amount of EI with the base tier sword. And in a nutshell, I like them. I think they do a really solid job. So some notes about Yari no Hanzo, because this is the first experience that I've had with them. There's little things that they do. So they put this little habaki saber on here. So this is a shipping thing that they put on, and you take it off, but you can put it on the sword, and basically it keeps the habaki from going all the way in and bouncing around on the ride over. So that's something that you would take off. But a lot of times, like some seasoned practitioners will put something that keeps their habaki out from going all the way in when their swords are resting. It's just a little nuance of something that I don't see done in a lot of manufacturers that I do see. Well, that was somebody took the time to do here. And the more expensive one is on the bottom here. And there's just some little things like you can notice, maybe not a big difference in how the Ito is tied. Honestly, it's not great, but the Ito is sufficiently tight on both of them. At least it was the first round of training that I had. The material is nicer on the more expensive one. The Sageo is nicer. It's not like a shoestring piece. There's, I believe, horn parts on the nicer one, and they look just a little different than the typical. There are some just different parts on here that look a little nicer. I'll break out the more expensive one. It's a decent steep curvature. You can't see it super well, but it has horn on the Koiguchi and Kurigata. The Kurigata is a little different shaped, so I don't know exactly how they're doing their scabbards, but the Kurigata is a little different shape than I'm used to seeing from most Chinese manufacturers. The Bohi starts a little higher as well. Like there's just a little bit of different shape going on. I don't know if you can see anything in here. It's the downside is that the more expensive one came with like a waxy coating on it. And I've had this same problem with Ronin Katana, and I get why they do it. It's like to keep the blade from rusting and coming all goopy or full of rust or whatnot, because the wax does a pretty solid job of abating that. However, it's really difficult to clean out. So I've tried leaving the sai in the sun for a little while to see if it would like melt the wax or change it. It doesn't seem to, and I've cleaned the wax off, and then when I draw and sheath it, inevitably some of it gets on the mune, and then I start getting it on my clothes. So that's a little bit of an irritation, but the sword itself is really, really nice to train with. It is loud. I can hear it. It's very comfortable to use. I haven't cut with it yet. I've just done some EI, but they do a really solid job of making a sword here. I happen to like it's light and lively as a practitioner piece. This feels really good. It has some little details on it too, like different seppa than you're used to seeing. I've seen the Fuji Kashira before, and they're not particularly well placed, but the Kashira is locked on. It's not bunchy. It feels really solid in my hands. As first impressions go, it's been generally very positive on this one. Now, I want to say that this sword is around $500 though, and $500 is also what this one cost. This Ryan sword piece here, and if I compare and contrast between the two of them, the scabbard, I like the Kurigata and Koiguchi area a little bit more, maybe more important from a trainer perspective. The Sagio here is longer and maybe a little better from a training perspective. But in terms of like features, it's tough to compare. The Ryan sword I got to give custom dimensions for. It's wider. It's very light and lively feeling, though part of that is because because of dimensions that I gave them. But if you know what you want in terms of sword width, then it's there. It also has a really nice bohi. The Ito is also very tight, but the fittings and stuff that you get, or the polish and whatnot on the scabbard, is a little better. So it's tough to say that it's a better deal, but I'm also not really comparing them super fairly. This is primarily sold in the EU, I think, is where most Yari no Hanzo sales tend to go. And it's my understanding that you can't necessarily buy, that it won't necessarily be that price in the Ryan swords won't necessarily be like $500 after VAT and some of the other stuff. And I'm not sure about Yari no Hanzo, since they're already in the EU, that the prices are a little different. So if you're in a non-domestic market or you're in Europe, then Yari no Hanzo may be quite a bit more affordable than something from some of the other brands after you add in the costs associated with VAT and whatnot. Anyway, I should try not to bang them up before I get to the review. I like the new one they sent me, but it's very light. Thank you again. This previously the Gion that felt nice in the hand and Index 12 was from Kratos. No, that's not for me. No, that's not for me either. All right. These back. Whittling down on the euros. All right. This is a Cold Steel 1796, and I will get around to probably not reviewing it, but I will use it as a comparison if I ever get a better 1796 to review. Supposedly, Windless is going to send me a few different swords, or has already sent me some swords. I'm not entirely sure. I think I know which ones, and I think it'll be interesting to play with them. There's some Royal Armories swords that are going to be in the batch that they're sending me. I think. So if you were curious about seeing one of those pushed, then in some undetermined time that will be possible. But I don't like this sword at all. It's too heavy. It doesn't feel good, and all the negative things people say about it are true. So as a basis of comparison to swords that are made from more historical proportions or feel dynamically better, it's good for that. But I don't really have any desire to move it around beyond what is required for comparison to something better, which is unfortunate because the 1796 can feel really good. I talked to Jason at +5 Armory. I hope I remember it. I'm terrible with names. Hopefully I'm getting it right. But I met him at Blade Show, and he had a 1796, and it just felt wonderful in the hand. And so the can feel really good, and his was made to historical proportions, and so they really can feel quite nice, but the Cold Steel one does not. I'm not giving anyone any information they don't already know, though. This is a sword from Fidestizon. This is the cheaper version of the Euro sword, and they have sent me 2 of them. And part of that was because I told them that I was having some trouble with the sword breaking at the hilt on the nicer European sword, and they sent me a second iteration of the cheaper one. So it didn't make it in the video, but supposedly one of these has got a better hilt construction. I'm probably not going to get to reviewing these for a while because I don't know about just did, but it's been a while, and you're kind of getting a picture for the amount of stuff that I have to move through. So it will be a while before I get to the 2 euros from Fidestizon. Speaking of what is in this brown box, which I probably won't take out now that I'm starting to get late here, is a kind of build it yourself iteration from Fidestizon, though I do think Kyle Alien Tude's channel had a review on that sword as well. So if you're curious about that, I have one. If there's some particular question, I can answer it. But yeah, it's gonna probably be a while before I do any of those. Are there any nice Boken I can get off Amazon? I would say, so I have a couple things in the works from a Boken perspective. The folks at Yari no Hanzo sent me the 2 swords, a Wakizashi from a Katori Boken, and their Boken actually seem pretty nice. So I don't know if Yari no Hanzo is on Amazon, but their Katori Wakizashi Boken was pretty solid. And then Kingfisher I needed to retire my Kingfisher Boken. Lasted me near well, I don't exactly know how long, but several years of being more abusive than I should have to it. And now it's just to a point where I needed another one or wanted another one. So I got one of those, and he is sending, I think I usually get the mid tier, the L7 Boken from Kingfisher, and he's sending me an L5 and the higher end one, and I think, and so I can do a comparison video, and I have to send the other 2 back, but I did buy some Kingfisher bowkin as well. So if you're asking what I use or what I'd recommend, it's that. But he does charge you like $150 for a stick. It's worth it though if you're going to be training on Amazon. I'm not sure. I don't like the cold steel bowkin. There's a site that I bought a couple bowkin off of called SDK. The bowkin that came from there were quite good. The Kingfisher bowkin I like a little bit more. And I'm not sure on Amazon though. All right. Oh, yeah. Even not fun to move that way. A couple more Kataners. So these are two swords from Swordier. Swordier sent me 4 swords. These are, you saw the long sword, and then this is going to make 3 of the 4. There's an arming sword that I'll talk about. And you might notice that this one's got like a little bit of loose ito. So both of these suffered from some ito looseness that I was not particularly thrilled with. And I don't know, it's kind of ebbing and flowing a little bit. Now it feels a little tighter than it did, but I could move it around pretty well before. And so I don't know if it's the weather, the change, I'm not exactly sure, but I pinged Swordier about it and said, hey, practice with it. Almost on the like second day I was using it for EI, I got a little wiggle in the Kashra. This one doesn't wiggle yet, but the ito doesn't feel much tighter. And I was practicing with the slightly nicer one. And they said, oh, that should not be the case. And there's another one of these on the way. So I will feature both in the video and talk about the second one though. So it's putting me a little bit behind because now I'm waiting for another one before I can proceed with the video. But at a glance, this has the kind of a knockoff of the Hanwei Oni Katana fittings, and the polish on it is just it's very zazzy. Hopefully some of it is coming through here. You can probably see it coming through better than most of the polishes have, and that's the truth of it. This isn't necessarily as good a polish technically, like historical, or it doesn't have as much like depth as some of the nicer polishes from Shadow Dancer or Zisei. But what it does have is just a polish that stands out and is very bold and fun to look at. And this, I think, is around a $300 sword. And the polish is just, it's fun. It makes me smile when I look at it. The Oni Katana fittings are also some of my favorite. I'm not sure how great I feel about them being a knockoff, but I guess that's the name of the game. And the sword is audible. It moves around. It came quite sharp. Haven't cut anything with it yet, but like other than the ito being kind of loose, the sword was quite nice. And the really zazzy polish is one of my favorite things. I also noticed something, and that is that this came with like a crazy long sageo, which I like because oftentimes the sageo are a little bit on the short side, and that limits some of your options. Some styles need longer sageo, some need shorter, but this has like just a ludicrously long sageo in comparison to some of the others, like 2 feet longer. And that is nice because then I can secure it in my obi and it's less tight and it looks proportional on me. So I do happen to actually like it. The less expensive one is a little bit less. There's a lot of companies vying for your attention in this like $130 price point, and Shadow Dancer does a great job. Ronin, Ryan Sword, like I've been very happy with any of those offerings. This one isn't bad, but like it's missing a few things and doesn't add much to the offering. So I like it a little bit less, but the really bold, zazzy polish is really, really fun to look at. And so I wouldn't understate the importance there. I haven't gotten to breaking it yet though, because I'm waiting for the next one. Most of my cold steel swords are from around 20 years ago and are near indestructible. Don't know about the current offerings. Lots of rope cutting to 4 inches wide and weighted and not easy to handle. I have been less, I don't know, some of them. So I like the Italian longsword and feeling. I can't say I've liked any of the katana that I've had, but I haven't had the newer varieties. I've just it's been a little bit of a mix with cold steel, but I've heard that some of them are lighter than they used to be, but I'm not entirely sure on that. Haven't had a newer super deep cold steel sword. All right. It'll be quite a cleanup. Moving through. This is an Atrium Design falchion from Kingston Arms. This was sent my way for review, but it was really more to like review the Swordier website or Sworda's website. And I picked a few swords. I made a video about their website, and that was one of them. I'll get around to reviewing that at some point. This is a Viking sword. Viking sword. This one is from Mini Katana, and it looks very, very similar to like the Balor Arms Viking sword. And this one has a wider grip because my hands fit in it, but it still doesn't make me like the sword anymore. It looks nice, but I can't say that I'm a particular fan of the feel. But this is the Mini Katana Viking sword. So this one is special. So this is a Higo Tora Shinsakudo. So it's a modern made Shinsakudo. It was made around 2021. It's the 258. Model that they have. So this is a genuine Japanese made Nihonto modern sword. And as you can see, it's very pretty. Now, this one is, I got it secondhand. The Ito is not necessarily in the greatest way, and the scabbard had been damaged a little bit, and it could use some love. But when it was new and when it was purchased, this would have been a little less than $13,000 for this sword. The Minuki would have been here, and those unfortunately didn't come with it. And the scabbard would, it looks just like this, but unfortunately it's been dinged up some. It had some damage from falling, but the blade is in fantastic shape. It has some minor scuffing and stuff like that, but nothing that really prohibits you from appreciating some of the artistry in there. It's a really nice feeling sword, and kind of tickled me because I found this secondhand, and I found it for what I consider to be a pretty solid deal. But it's basically like a 31-inch blade, and finding a Shinsakudo that is my size, or in a longer size, which is what my preference tends to be, also with a shorter handle, is not something that comes up every day. So I'm very pleased. My plan is to train with this eventually. Haven't swung it around or done anything with it yet, but this will probably be a blade that I attempt to use for EI, and we'll see how much it agrees with me or not. But as it is at the moment, I really like it, and I've been appreciating the way it looks for quite a while. You can see that the hamon comes out pretty well, but this is, like I said, it's a Shinsakudo blade. It's made by licensed Japanese smiths and yada, yada, yada. And when I do a review, I will talk more about it. But as it is, it's very, very expensive. So I don't think it's going to be for everyone. But I'm pretty happy with it. I'm not sure if I'll clean it up or if I'll just use it as is for a hot minute and then figure out what to do with it after that. Spend a lot of time on that one. That is a Ronin Katana. I can't remember exactly which model, but one that I picked up secondhand. This was not sent to me for review. I've gotten a number of samples from Ronin in the past. This one was one I got with my own monies, and I'm really happy with some of the stuff that I see. It feels really good in the hand. It came very sharp. I like the way the blade feels. The knots don't look too bad, and they're all very, very tight, which is nice to see. I know sometimes when I get review samples, people wonder if they're cherry picked. This is one I bought secondhand, kind of out in the wild, and the Ito on it is very, very tight, which is nice to see because I often had some issues with Ito tightness. This is a mini katana, and this is the Koko Shinbo, I think. So it's an anime. It's painted and meant to be full eyeballs. I'm not exactly sure. I'll eventually get around to reviewing this. I don't know anything about the characters or anything that anything going on there, but this is one that they sent me to take a look at, and I will take a look at it at some point. I figured that the mini katana sent me actually a fair number of swords all at once, and I figured that the best thing that I could do would be focus on the ones that might be used for training or that fall into the kind of category of things that I review a little bit more. This is I want to say like around $130, and as $130 sword, it's not good in comparison to the Ronin or the Ryan or any number of other swords that you have seen for $130. The Ito moves around. The diamonds are haphazard. It's not particularly sharp, but obviously it does something a little different than those. And it's this anime looking sword, which is the point of it. And so that's the feature that it has that others don't. And I just haven't gotten around to really doing much review wise with it yet. But it's still like kind of cool that you can buy a functional sword from, like, I don't know anything about the media, but if you were a fan of it, then it's kind of cool that like you can go buy that stuff. When I was a kid, like if I had easy access to Conan swords, I don't know. So this is a sword from Kamunjo, I believe. And so I think I've talked a little bit about swords from him before, but they have varying degrees of sensitivity and drama around them. There's some speculation around where they're from and who makes them and yada, 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 but they're usually inexpensive and slightly different and come with interesting polishes. And that's what this one is. And I will eventually get around to talking about it, and then I will probably sell it. It's a good base for somebody to start something like some kind of project with, because the Shirasaya here is really, 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 really thick. And so as a storage scabbard, it's like very wonky. But if you were going to try and use the Shirasaya as a basis to mount a blade, then it would give you lots of room to work with. All right, moving on. Not quite the end of the Euro swords, but I'm getting there. You guys feel why I said like I should probably make a stream and like talk about some of this stuff, because there, as you can see, I'm behind on the review schedule. I don't know that I'm ever going to get ahead. Good problems to have, but I digress. It's a little bit of a log to work through. So this is a Dark Sword Armory arming sword. I can't remember the model number. It is hefty in comparison, as are a number of Dark Sword Armory swords, but a lot of little things have been addressed on this one that weren't as nice on previous Dark Sword Armory pieces. So they still are buffed down, and some people like that, some people don't. I don't happen to mind the shininess, but the gap in the crossguard is cleaner and nicer than they have been in the past. The secondary bevel is smaller, and it's quite a bit sharper. It's not super sharp. It doesn't cut particularly well. I have tried. It needs to be refined still, but the edge is much easier to refine. It's a lot closer to a solid edge. It's not honestly much different than an Albion sword, apart from the blade doesn't have as much distal taper and is quite a bit thicker. And then sometimes there was a lip on the leather, and there still is, but it's more refined and smaller. So there have been some cleaning that has happened on the Dark Sword Armory side of things, and this is one that I need to review and also clean, apparently, because I see some some rust beginning to form. And this is the Type 14 from Sortier. Maybe I could set it down here and it won't flip around. Yeah, that's okay. That looks good. All right, so this one I really like. I like the way it feels, and that means something might be wrong with it. So has a wheel pommel. The wheel pommel doesn't chew into my hand as much as wheel pommels often do. It's got a nice profile to it. It's got a kind of a Damascus-y looking steel to it. And it feels really nice in the hand. It moves really well and it cuts really well. But generally speaking, these Type 14 style blades feel bad in my hand. They feel kind of cumbersome and clunky as I think about my Albion Sovereign or the Yeoman or the Sheriff that I've had from Albion, or the Henry V from Arms and Armor, or any of the other Type 14s that I've played with. They don't usually feel very good. And this one does. So I'm guessing something is ahistoric about it. But if you like a sword of this style and you want to cut with it and have fun with it, this is excellent. It's really fun to move around. It cuts really well. And I'm eventually going to get a review on it. But at the moment, I don't have one. But I'm working on it. I like this sword, though. Of the Sortier options that have been sent my way, this one is my favorite. It'd be cool if they had a slightly different grip. This might be a thing that maybe you can customize yourself. Not a big fan of the choice there. However, I like the blade shape. I like how it moves. I like how it cuts. And it's the Damascus makes it fun to look at. I want to say these are around 300-ish something dollars. And they're just, yeah, it's just a lot of fun to cut with. So if you're looking on the Sortier website, I don't have links and whatnot for you, but it's arming sword, Damascus arming sword. I can't remember what they call it. The next ones I'm going to tell you about are from Lands Connect Emporium. And so I've just have them in these kind of storage scabbards that I have around. Doing a terrible job, again, at talking into the microphone. But I'm having an angry 3-year-old any minute now. So these were sent to me from Lands Connect Emporium. There's a left-handed messer here and then a right-handed messer here. I can't remember the names of the swords exactly, but there are two that I hadn't reviewed yet. And I will send them my way. And I can't remember the context, but basically it was like, hey, if you want to break one, we'll send you one, I think was kind of the vibe that I was getting anyway. So I will at least break one of these. I'm not sure if I'm going to do both, but I think the left-handed has breaking in its future. So that is one that I'm actually going to be working on next. I've had these for a while and I like them. I like them a lot, honestly. I think they do a great job. I think Lands Connect Emporium is affordable. The style is a little crude, admittedly, but they've gradually improved. And it's kind of grown on me. I like the human element of it, and they feel really good in the hand. Both of them do. Neither one disappoints. This little left-handed variety guy up here is very light and lively in the hand. The one below it is a little bit more stout, but feels like a giant Bowie knife almost, and it's kind of shaped the same way. They're delightful pieces to move around, and I really like. Admittedly, I'm kind of looking forward to testing one and pushing it to failure, but I'm honestly going to be sad to see him go. All the Lands Connect Emporium pieces that I've had have kind of grown on me, and I've come to really like and appreciate. They all feel really good in the hand and have kind of a personality that I want, like inspires me to play with them and puts a smile on my face, and that I kind of want to have a beer with. So I really like these swords. I'm glad they sent them my way. And if it were not raining, I would not be doing this stream. I would be out there pushing one of these to failure, or at least cutting through some beer cans with them. They are lots of fun though. So I'm going to put these down. I realize I'm not doing great at questions, so let me see what I've missed. Seems like about 10 years worth of yeah, well, not quite. This is at one video a week. If I were to do one, I mean, this is, yeah, probably not 10 years, but at least a couple years. I don't know that each one of them is going to get their own specific video, though. More than likely, what I'm going to do is like the swordier blades, the katanas anyway, I'll put them in one. The Yari no Hanzo katanas will be in one. A lot of these Shadow Dancer swords that I'll talk about in a moment will be in one. Do a little butt shot there. This I'm not going to take out because it's weird. It's a mini katana Kopesh, I think. It just came to me from mini katana, so I think that's what it is. It's weird. Not a big fan yet, but have to figure some stuff out. I won't even bother with this one. This is a Sabersmith small sword. I've talked about Sabersmith a few times, and I don't know that that one is going to change any hearts and minds, but it's a fun little sword anyway. I initially got it and decided to keep it for the same reason I kept the Starfire blade, but now I have the Starfire blade, and I think that's a better one for my kid to whack trees with. All right. Winding down. The next ones I'm going to talk about are Shadow Dancer primarily. And the top one represents, they sent me one of each of the Tyrannosaurus line of swords. So basically there's like a ninja toe, a choke toe, a Unokobi Zakuri, a Shobu Zakuri, a Shinogi Zakuri, like 8 different profiles of blades. And they are in this Tyrannosaurus line up here. And I grabbed this one and trained with it a little bit. And those of you who know me will know exactly why. Maybe it's because it's got this swirly Mitsudome on it. But this is the Shinogi Zakuri piece from Shadow Dancer. All of a sudden, this doesn't seem to be in frame as well as it was. Anyway, the Shadow Dancer Tyrannosaurus line, haven't tested any of them, haven't cut with any of them yet, but they're on their budget side of swords. And the main thing that stands out to me is that they kind of have the same kind of shapeliness that generally Shadow Dancer pieces do. These scabbards don't have as much profile taper, but generally, like, all the DNA of Shadow Dancer is there, and they seem to offer a pretty solid value. However, the Ito is not the same kind of tightness. It's not great. So this doesn't have the same kind of like Hishigami Pro level Ito on it, which to me is like the best $60 you can spend on a sword out there. The Ito moves around a little bit, and so it's not egregious, but usually Shadow Dancer Ito is very tight. In comparison, this is a different Shadow Dancer sword, and like I can't move it at all. As with this one, I can kind of, without much effort, I can push the Ito around. So the Tyrannosaurus line, very strongly recommend if you order one, you ask them to upgrade your Ito, because I can't say that the Ito as it is in these base level models is particularly impressive to me. The rest of it, though, I haven't played with, apart from doing basic EI with it. And they draw and sheath well. They seem to be reasonably sharp, but I haven't cut anything with it yet. And I've only practiced for like maybe one session of EI. This one is a like CRV4 or something steel sword. I can't remember exactly what it was. Shadow Dancer sent it to me a hot minute ago, but I ended up pushing the S7 one that they sent at the same time to failure, and this one kind of got the back burner. But it's also a very nice sword, has very tight Ito, and was quite good. And I will get to it eventually before it's completely irrelevant, hopefully. All right, I think I'm going to talk about a couple more after this, but okay. So Shadow Dancer. This is the Morimasa Katana, and you can see it has these 2 little swells down here. So if you look on their website, they have a replica of a Morimasa sword, and it's more like a replica of the Hamon and profile. This one isn't folded. It doesn't have the Horimono, kind of the engravings on the blade itself. And it's, in probably a slightly different kind of kosher eye mounting than it it might be historically, but proportionally, it's very, very similar in curvature and shape to the historic piece. And that's awesome. It's not something that you commonly see done. A lot of times they're just kind of the same shape and size katana out there all the time. It's neat to see them manufacturing a replica of a particular sword and trying to recreate, at least to some degree, some of the characteristics apart from just the size of that sword. So you have similar hamon, and it gives you a feel for how some of the historic swords may have felt. And this, it's small. It's more like a big wakizashi to me, but it feels really good. And it looks pretty handsome, but it's not inexpensive. I want to say this is like $800 or $900, so not nothing. The next one is a Kogusomaru. So this one was actually sent to me from the Time Blade Guild, the makers of the lightsaber stuff. So they also distribute for Shadow Dancer, and I want to say that they are a company outside the U.S. And my camera has died, so I will skip my dumb face. That's a sign I'm streaming too long. So this is one by the Time Blade Guild that was sent to me for review. I will do it. It was made by Shadow Dancer, so it's not going to be too much different. But if you're outside the US and looking for Shadow Dancer and don't want to order directly from them, then the Time Blade Guild offers a selection of them, and this is one from them. They asked me if I wanted to review one. I said sure. I generally like Shadow Dancer stuff, and I elected to get a Kogusomaru blade because it was different and interesting and cool, and I don't have a lot of them. Hey. That one is not sitting upright for me. So this is a, I think they call it like a choji blade, and it's really long and really thin. And I don't know why I'm looking at the other camera because it's off now, but probably because my microphone is over here. All right, so this is nice. It's awesome to train with. I asked them for a long sword, and they said, well, we have this one, and it's wonderful. It has very tight ito up here. It doesn't move around. The knots don't wander a whole lot. They're not looking great in the camera, but they look really solid. They're a little on the small side. The hamon is erratic and lovely. It also has like a very nice shape to it. The katana, the Kisaki is almost an okisaki. I think it would qualify as an okisaki, and it seems, but it's just small. It has a slightly different shape than the average, and so even though it's long, it feels really, really good in the hand. I really like this sword. I like training with it. It's been one that if I get a chance to, I find myself leaning towards to train with because it's very light. It's not super loud, but it is nevertheless very, very, very fun to train with. All right. So I also have a spear from Hanban. I have a few other things. There are 4 or 5 things that I didn't actually quite get to, but my little guy, I think, is waking up and my patience is running out. So I have this Gladius. This is another one I'm going to try and get to in the pretty near future. I have a bronze sword from Hanban and a spear from Hanban that are there, as well as a Zatoichi sword, and I think that's going to round up the stuff. I didn't get a chance to really show those, but with a camera that's dead, I think it's suggesting to me that maybe I have too many swords to get through. Anyway, there's actually more on the way. I have some from Windless. There's some more pieces from Swordier coming. There's a few more for me to get through. If there's anything here that struck your fancy that you really, really want to see, then feel free and shout it out in the commentary or ping me if you have any questions on it, and I will certainly try to answer them for you. But I thought I would get out some general, do I like it, some pros, cons, such as they are, while I had a moment to do so, because I have gotten a lot of different questions about some of these swords, and so I thought I'd note what my queue is and some of the initial thoughts on them, so that if you are waiting on my thoughts for whatever reason before buying, then you at least have a vibe check. Anyway, that is, I think going to round out the end of the video here. I'll try to get through any of the questions that I have because it doesn't look like there's too many behind. Have you ever seen a Hanwei Wind and Thunder? Looks like a beefy blade. I actually handled one very recently at the Atlanta Blade Show. They had a Hanwei Wind and Thunder. I was actually very tempted to buy it because they had it for like $400 or something. And so it had some scratches and some like issues, but it was a Hanwei Wind and Thunder, and it was an absolute beef of a blade, and not one that I would. I don't think it would be one that I would really gravitate to. It looked like it would be a very effective cutter though, but it is very beefy. It's a real chunker. It has swirly mitsudomes on it though, so I was naturally tempted to buy that. Yes, it has to be sharpened a bit. The blade stays crazy. Probably not for me. Thanks for you are welcome, sir. All right, so that's all I've got from the stream side of thing. I think I made it through the questions. If anyone has any about anything in particular, feel free, and again, throw them my way, and I will endeavor to answer them in an effort to help you decide what swords to buy. Anyway, sorry, my face is blurry, and I'm talking in the microphone though, so you can still hear me. I'm going to call it here, everyone. Cheers, and thank you for watching.